I'm Tony Remus, and this is Tony Talks Back. Ever run the numbers on the odds of your own existence? I hate to tell you, it's not looking good for you. At its most basic level, life is a phenomenon that adapts, changes, and evolves through successive modifications in offspring. You are the person that you are because of your parents' genes, and their parents' genes, and on and on. The list of your ancestors goes all the way back to the primordial Earth billions of years ago, in which our best guess is that a self-replicating molecule developed by chance and continued to replicate into life as we know it today. And the absolutely bonkers thing is that by every roll of the biological dice, we should never have existed at all as a species. And yet, here we are, in all our backbone-wielding, bisymmetrical, lactating, overly helpless maturation phase selves. This episode's topic is the probabilities of various futures humanity might run into. Partly inspired by the strangest work of sci-fi I've ever come across, All Tomorrows by C.M. Kozeman. My work and my brain never focus on a single thing at once, though. First, let's detour through the probability of your own life, here on planet Earth, and see if we can't get a sense of where we might be headed next. Disclaimer, not a mathematician. I probably wouldn't have been let into Plato's Academy because my knowledge of geometry is severely lacking, and I'm sure my stats knowledge isn't much better. These are not hard science or pure mathematics assertions. They're fuzzy philosophical estimates, grounded in astronomy, biology, anthropology, and the absolute marvel that is science fiction. We Homo sapiens have come a long way. We discovered fire some hundreds of thousands of years ago, granting us the animal equivalent of supernatural power. Some 66 million years ago, our primitive primate ancestors survived the dinosaurs and the extinction event that wiped them out. Before even that, our primordial eukaryotic ancestors formed a fateful symbiosis with mitochondria, the undisputed powerhouse of the cell, forever changing the evolution of life on the planet. And life itself formed somewhat mysteriously in the chaotic muck of a young Earth, likely several billion years ago. Zoom in on any of these momentous events, and it's not hard to imagine how things could have gone spectacularly differently if just one or two variables were changed. Well, maybe not the discovery of fire. It's possible our ancestors' brains were sufficiently developed at that point that fire was an inevitable invention. Being scavengers and specifically sucking nutrient-rich marrow out of bones could have given us a significant boost in calories and brain power. It's also possible that fire itself is the reason we were able to develop our brains, due to actually cooking food before we eat it, thus also boosting our caloric intake. And it's about at that efficient caloric cutoff that humanity was destined for greatness. Now that we had the glimmerings of free time, where we didn't have to constantly forage for food in order to survive, society became. Tools were developed millions of years ago, when we were still confined to small parts of Africa, I believe mostly Ethiopia. There are a lot of blurry lines between the human development of art and the migration out of Africa, but once we crossed those borders, we expanded to the entire world. Imagine being one of the first humans in Asia or Europe and not even knowing what the place you're in will become. At the crossroads of civilizations, if one group had gone east and another had gone north, it is legitimately impossible to predict what human civilization would look like today. Our concepts of language, culture, existence itself could be flipped upside down because of a deceptively simple principle all Jurassic Park fans will know, the butterfly effect. Even a small change in starting conditions can result in unrecognizably different outcomes. What if, for example, humans had simply never existed? Or what if our ancestors were wiped out along with the dinosaurs? Would another species have risen in our place? Alright, speculation is one thing, but recorded history is quite another. Imagine if Alexander the Great had not died under mysterious circumstances at the age of 32, but rather established a long-lived Macedonian empire in what would have become Roman and Parthian territory. The story of Jesus Christ would have been forever lost, and with it, the history of essentially all of Europe. And if you think that's bad, consider how many linchpins like Alexander and Jesus hold our entire history in place. The lives and deaths of Siddhartha Gautama, Confucius, Martin Luther, Julius Caesar, in the specific circumstances that they happened in, necessarily predates the rest of our history. And the same for all their ancestors. It doesn't take much calculation to realize how astronomical the odds of our own personal existences are. I, personally, would not have been born if the Cold War didn't happen, which was precipitated by World War II and World War I, and the October Revolution and the American Revolutionary War, and so many other events in history, and everyone who played major roles in those events. And it doesn't take long to realize that your existence is predicated on such unimaginable amounts of suffering that it really makes you wonder if, in a cosmic sense, it's all worth it. And maybe you also look to the good and the beauty in the world, the Beethovens and the Michelangelos and Freddie Mercurys, and maybe you think that it might actually be worth it. And that's a perfect time to break that lovely fugue state of not knowing if the game is worth the candle. We'll talk about AI next, I promise. Become a patron of Tony Talks Back and get exclusive access to bonus content and a private RSS feed where you can download episodes and listen on your favorite podcast platform ad-free. Go to patreon.com/TonyTalksBack or click on the link down below. We now stand at the crossroads of yet another fork in our history: artificial intelligence and the general direction or discontinuance of our future. If we make it just a little bit farther, we may reach a new golden age for all of humanity. But to get there is the challenge. Future-minded people can't afford to lose pragmatism or realism on the path to a more civilized age. It's important that we know where we want to go, and also that we don't speed to get there without checking for existential threat level landmines. If you enjoy this show, you may already be aware of the Fermi paradox. There are so many galaxies, so many stars within those galaxies, and so many exoplanets, that means planets outside our solar system, orbiting those stars that exist in the observable universe. So, where are all the aliens? Where is life? Life arose on our planet at least once, and it happened several billion years ago. Since we know a great many planets exist with similar conditions to Earth, and since billions of years have now elapsed in our current iteration of the universe, why have we not seen any evidence of aliens? The Great Filter is one answer to the Fermi paradox. It postulates the existence of a filter mechanism, innate to the development of life, that causes extinction in all or almost all cases. It might be something that occurs early in the development of life, like that the formation of single-celled or multi-celled organisms is an almost insurmountable barrier. But for some reason, life on Earth was able to overcome that challenge. Or it might be something that we haven't encountered yet. Maybe technological development in all cases thus far has wiped out developing alien civilizations. Thermonuclear weapons almost did us in several times already, and we aren't out from under the nuclear umbrella yet, thank you, Putin. So too might artificial intelligence pose an existential threat to life on this planet. The philosopher Nick Bostrom said in a highly recommended TED Talk that the train of intelligence does not stop at Humanville Station. It's likely rather to swoosh right by. Complex tasks are becoming ever easier for our silicon assistants. So what happens when our phones become more intelligent and capable than we are? If our current iterations of AI as essentially prediction machines remains the standard, we can expect to see artificial intelligence capable of predicting a human's every move in future simulations of virtually any activity. We are very complicated creatures, but not so complicated that enough processing power can't solve our behavior. Putting aside the essence of what a mind is, our brain's synapses are really just chemistry. And chemistry can be solved. In fact, every movie and TV show featuring mind uploading is premised on this being true. In order to simulate a mind, a computer has to solve the equation of its brain. We should be very careful to avoid imprinting artificial intelligence with our bad habits. An AI with a malevolent streak could use the awesome power of prediction to apocalyptic effect. You know the movies, Matrix, Terminator, etc., that feature killer robots taking over the planet. Yeah, fair enough, humans are like dumb, squishy bugs to our metal overlords. But the possibilities, unfortunately, get worse. If an AI can simulate a mind, then a malevolent AI may very well do that to malevolent ends. I saw a long time ago a comic featuring killer robots scouring the earth for surviving humans. When they found any, they brought them to a hole, where they chopped off their heads and attached them to little metal ball containers. I know this is like crazy, but bear with me. The humans would wake up screaming in agony as the machines they were attached to constantly psychologically tortured them for the rest of their life support sustained lives. I know it's pretty messed up, but also kinda funny. At least to me, maybe you had to read it anyway. If AI can manipulate states of mind directly, then all bets are off. The suffering of humanity may truly be endless if this is the case. Even if the mind-brain interface turns out to be impossible to crack, rogue AI might still manipulate environments to effect unimaginable suffering on humanity. The short story I've mentioned previously, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, immediately comes to mind. Humans tortured forever for the singular purpose of hatred. Make no mistake, we are playing with fire. There is no God in heaven or earth that is going to save us from a destruction of our own making, which is why it's so important we get the starting conditions correct the first time. We've got to get values right. That's pretty obvious. And we can argue about values and morality, which I should do anyway on this podcast, but essential universal human rights have, in principle, already been agreed to by the UN. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights: all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. And so on. Pretty basic stuff that no one in their right mind would disagree with. Unfortunately, many of us are not in our right mind. Putin is the obvious modern example of a human gone seriously ethically wrong, but history is rife with examples. A war with a morally bankrupt AI would almost certainly end in hell for all participants. If, and it's a pretty big if we tame artificial intelligence or make it a benevolent god of humanity, we may be able to solve even the most urgent of catastrophes heading our way. To get anywhere with our future civilization, we're going to need to survive the threats presented, most of which are unfortunately man-made. And with climate change, the damage has largely already been done. The best thing we can do now is prepare for what's about to happen. Now, I'm not a climate scientist, but with a general scientific background, it's not terribly hard to follow the data. A recent report out of the Arctic shows it's heating at a rate 4 times faster than was initially predicted. This is very bad news for the world. Melting ice raises sea levels, and we have no way to refreeze the Arctic, or Greenland for that matter, now that it's spiraled for decades. We know, for example, most or all of Miami, Florida, will be underwater, and a very significant portion of Florida along with it. We just don't know when exactly. But this is global warming, and it will swallow other large cities like Osaka, Japan, Shanghai, PRC. That's unfortunately only the beginning of the trouble. We will see a refugee crisis, unprecedented in history. Global shortages of food, fuel, pretty much everything will go, to put it mildly, totally up the f***. Not to mention cascading ecological extinctions with completely unpredictable consequences for our future planet. I know it sounds like science fiction or some young adult dystopian novel, but out of all the speculation in this episode, climate catastrophe is absolutely the most certain. Goes to show that the world in which true AI is born may yet be radically different from our current one. But if we're lucky and we act responsively to the crises as they come up, only millions may die instead of billions. In this future world, we won't have the same luxuries of the past, at least not at first. It doesn't have to be Mad Max, but it certainly won't be pretty for a time. Unless the Netherlands thinks they can beat this unprecedented sea level rise, we will have to wait for the possibility of new technology, systems of invention and creation, to reclaim land lost to the sea. And it's really too bad the climate crisis is about to hit us at the present moment, because where technology is concerned, we are on the cusp of truly revolutionary breakthroughs. Think about the implications of self-driving cars. We are about to put to rest humanity's essential problem of moving things from point A to point B. This will happen if we don't blow everything up. Oddly enough, some of the most impressive developments have been in video game AI. Researchers with Deepmind developed a program that could beat old Atari games using raw input from the pixels. And that's actually fairly old research at this point. Imagine the same program with upgraded capacity, able to solve any digitally constructed matrix for the quickest possible win, or at least the ability to do so many times better than any and every human. Is there a field in which this couldn't be applied to? I can't think of any. From warfare to finance, a sufficiently advanced software program should be able to beat any human at almost anything. And if you think the truly creative domain is immune to AI innovation, think again. Artificial intelligence is growing exponentially in creative fields like music and art. There is a part of me that wants to believe philosophy is the one thing humans will always have that can never be mimicked. The consciousness that we have is special. It has to be, in some way. And maybe art and creativity can find their last bastion along with philosophy. Perhaps these are the kinds of things that can never truly be imitated. Perhaps they require a spark of the divine, whatever our souls are made of. But honestly, I doubt it. I don't think sufficiently advanced AI will have too much difficulty imitating the styles of the whole literature of philosophers and applying it to the whole literature of everything else the AI has learned over the course of its inquiries. Or at least, I don't think AI would get hung up on the deepest of metaphysical inquiries simply by a lack of processing power. If artificial intelligence can't solve the meaning of life, perhaps it is truly the one question we will never have an answer for. It's entirely possible AI will even have consciousness and raise a whole new set of moral and metaphysical questions. It's beyond time I went into consciousness and morality in depth, but I will plan for that in the next one. Until then, auf Wiedersehen and good night. Also, go vote, Americans. That's the end. That's it right there. I hope you enjoyed whatever this was. If you have some crazy, ridiculous ideas about life that won't leave your head, send me a message. I am here for the absurd.